Hello everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's been 1 year since Parkland. How have things been since then? We're going to take a look. Has that activism worked? And of course, we remember all the people who we lost on that day. Also, judge finds damning evidence about Paul Manafort even worse than previously thought. The truth about Amy Klobuchar story and a lot more on the show today. Time to get the world, ladies and gentlemen, in 15 minutes. You know what it is. All right, so that's what we got for you here today. We got a great show. That's what we got. It's a Thursday. We're almost to the end of the week, everyone, and today is also Thursday, February 14th, the 1-year anniversary of one of the worst shootings in U.S. history. On Valentine's Day last year, 17 people were killed at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Alyssa Aldahef, Scott Bagel, Martin Duque Aguiano, Nicholas Dworet, Aaron Feiss, Jamie Guttenberg, Chris Hickson, Luke Hoyer, Kara Loughran, Gina Montalto, Joaquin Oliver, Aliana Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Schachter, Karen Shentrup, and Peter Wang. 17 more people were injured. The survivors turned activists to Parkland, Florida, created by the massacre that irrevocably changed the tight-knit community, will spend the day quietly grieving and reflecting. As, honestly, how else could you really expect them to do it? It's incredibly rough day for them, and you can only really imagine. I mean, I don't think any of us could really truly understand unless we've experienced if we've experienced tragedy similar in scope to what they've had to go through. Thursday is going to be like a train. It's all going to hit. 21-year-old Jamal Lemmy, a 2017 Stoneman Douglas graduate who co-founded March for Our Lives, told the New York Times' Patricia Mezzi, you don't get over something like this. You never can. You can't get over something that never should have happened. March for Our Lives, as David Hogg told NPR's Morning Edition host David Green. It's Valentine's Day. As I remember you, grief washes over me, but the grief emboldens me to fight for change. I wish I could take all the bullets for you, Lori Aldahef wrote in an open letter to her daughter, Alyssa, who passed away. It's been really a tectonic shift in the movement as parents and peers turned their grief into action by forming the gun violence prevention movement March for Our Lives, mobilizing activists across the country to demand stricter gun control laws through walkouts, marches, and voter registration drives. They have seen some concrete results. In the States, the gun safety movement experienced a tectonic shift in 2018, according to Giffords Law Center's Gun Law Trend Watch. Republicans and Democratic legislatures in 26 states and D.C. heeded their calls to actions, working from the foundations laid by advocates over the past few decades, and enacted 67 new gun safety laws. With the support from former Representative Gabby Giffords, state passed extreme risk protection orders founded by urban gun violence reduction programs, raised the minimum age to buy guns, banned ghost guns and bump stocks, disarmed domestic abusers, and much more. Voters in Washington State soundly approved this year's only gun safety ballot measure, enacting new restrictions on semi-automatic rifles and encouraging safe firearm storage. So yeah, that is very good stuff. So just a taste of what they've been able to do this year, March for Our Lives. In just 1 year, this young movement has been able to really do so much. John Della Volpe, who is the director of polling at Harvard Institute of Politics, credited the Parkland students with sparking in the 2018 midterms, the highest youth turnout in at least 32 years along the most significant partisan shift, plus 24 Democrat of any electoral group, any group in the electorate since 2014, where I'm sure it wasn't the young people who were voting in large numbers in 2014. For the last year, our polling has consistently shown that high school shootings were the most dominant issue for young voters, particularly and dominant issue for young voters and highly correlated with participation. The Parkland students deserve a tremendous amount of credit. They were the catalyst. The combination of Emma Gonzalez calling BS, followed by Ryan Deitch challenging Marco Rubio on national TV, and David Hogg defiantly lifting his arm in solidarity with millions, are to today's America what 4 young black students refusing to leave a Woolworth lunch counter were to America in 1960. And the thing is, they're not going anywhere. The Guardian's Lois Beckett reports on the Parkland activists' next steps aimed at 2020, saying today, Hogg and other students are focusing on the quiet, unglamorous work of grassroots organizing. The group is training 8 regional directors to help build out their March for Our Lives local chapters. They want to prepare for the 2020 presidential election by expanding the national reach of their youth voter registration and turnout operation, saying, I work 110 plus hours a week. I've been on 3 national tours around the country in the last 10 months. I've been in 41 states plus D.C. This work doesn't stop, said Matt Deach, again the director of strategy for March for Our Lives, who works alongside Jacqueline Corin, told the AP's Kelly Kennedy. A consensus across all subgroups believe that 70% believe gun laws should be more strict. Whether you're black, white, female, young, old, Republican, Democrat, live in the city, live in the rural parts of America, or you even live in the suburbs, you are still for stricter gun control laws. So credit to them and all the great work they've done. All right, we now turn to our next story, where Paul Manafort, according to a federal judge, Amy Berman Jackson, has ruled that there is evidence that former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort lied to special counsel Robert Mueller's team even after agreeing to cooperate, according to documents released today and reported by Vox. Manafort has already been convicted of financial crimes in Virginia and charges in Washington. Now Jackson will take these lies into account when deciding on a sentencing, pretty much voiding the plea deal. It was another big blow for one of the guys in the Trump campaign who can never really get caught doing a crime, but always gets caught lying about it for some reason. All right. Interesting story. Probably one of the biggest quotes of the day that I really wanted to tell you about was a great article by Libby Watson over in Splinter, where we have last week, as I'm sure you know, you're familiar with the Amy Klobuchar story. We've covered it here on both on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network and Newsflash before. As last week, 3 stories were published detailing Amy Klobuchar's allegedly abusive behavior towards her staff, Libby writes, 2 from HuffPost and 1 from BuzzFeed. This week, yet another story was published, this time by Yahoo. Anonymous former staffers alleging Klobuchar would throw objects and retaliate against staffers who took new jobs by calling their new bosses and asking them to rescind the offer. Klobuchar has said in response that she can be tough and push people, but has defended herself overall and her office. She has many staff who have been with her for years. The political implications of this story have dominated the discussion. Klobuchar is running for president, obviously. But that's also because journalists who write about politicians are mostly incapable of analyzing issues outside the horse race framing. That's another great point. And the issue that she is pushing us to view us in here is really interesting because it's kind of like an issue of labor, kind of the boss versus the worker mentality. Obviously, there's been a Washington Post piece from Friday headline, Does it matter if Amy Klobuchar is a mean boss, which treats the allegation as if Klobuchar's problem is purely political? These questions are absurd. In what other job would we ask what other job would we ask whether we should scrutinize the way a boss treats their staff? How could it not matter if a boss treats their staff like hell, whether they're a politician or not? It sure as hell matters for the staff. That's a good point. This classic Solizastic analytic approach of politics reporters, feeling unable to weigh in on whether something is actually good or bad because it wouldn't be objective. They stick to analyzing whether it affects electoral outcomes. And I mean, you get the sense that they actually would want to do it, but again, they can't because you know why. We gotta stay objective here. What if, instead of approaching the story as a matter of political intrigue, we treated this story like it should be treated, as a labor story? So true there. A story of shitty boss and workers who deserve better. In the American workplace, the boss has outside power and the workers have increasingly less. This is far more pressing in low-wage jobs, but it's also true in Congress, where staffers are underpaid and overworked, and the boss is a member of the ruling elite. It says something important about Klobuchar's understanding of labor rights and her politics if she abuses the power she has over staff to demand they complete her menial personal errands or sometimes scream at her staffers for tiny errors. Does she think that other bosses have a right to treat their staffers the way she allegedly does? Does she understand how power operates in the workplace at all? Like, what's her take on unions? All this stuff. It all becomes very, very revealing. And it's important to understand that, because we need to know if we want to have a president, especially on the Democratic side, they have to be good on labor. They have to be supportive of labor, because labor needs the support of a Democratic president right now. And someone who treats her workers like crap is not going to be the way to go. All right. Now to Congress, where if you were to distill everything about America's foreign policy over the past 30 years and give it a human form, you would have Elliott Abrams. He's a convicted liar and war criminal whose participations in any number of U.S.-backed coups, insurrections, and massacres would, in a just world, land him a spot in The Hague, not President Donald Trump's inner circle. Nevertheless, he sits in Donald Trump's inner circle, leading the administration's response to Venezuela. There's a great article by John Schwartz about The Intercept that we covered extensively on a Newsflash a few weeks ago, I think 2 or 3 Newsflash episodes ago, but we don't have that much time to get into it today, but we do have time to play you this great clip of Ilhan Omar grilling Abrams about some of his crimes. And we're going to play that for you in just a few seconds. But, yeah, let me just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show here, people.
Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
That
was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February 8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
Ooh, damn. Yeah, that is some good stuff. It goes on for about, 3 more minutes, and it's just not getting any better for Elliott Abrams, that's for sure. All right. Since Senators Debbie Stabenow and Tammy Baldwin introduced a bill today that would allow people over the age of 50 to buy into Medicare. It's a very limited gesture towards expanding health care, one that would do nothing for millions of people who are currently without health care or unable to afford their insurance, copays, or deductibles. The bill doesn't say what the premiums would be. Of all the Medicare buy-in or public option plans, the kind that expands care by expanding age eligibility is arguably the most laughable, since it doesn't do anything to help people under 50. Still, that is something, and in that, it's literally not nothing. And yet, despite its limited scope, 2 key healthcare industry lobbying groups have already come out to trash the bill. The Federation of American Hospitals, which represents for-profit hospitals, attacked the bill by saying it would weaken coverage for everyone else and it makes it harder for hospitals to provide care. What they mean is that Medicare pays hospitals much less for procedures than private insurance does, and if people have Medicare, that's less money for them. So yeah, again, just a taste of this shows you what's going to happen. This is arguably weak. Not arguably, incredibly weak bill is going to be trashed so much by the healthcare industry. And we are saying now